talking about Mamshit. It is pronounced Mamshit. Just going to put that out there real quick. So this is one of my favorite sites. This is a very small part of it behind me. Mamshit is a trading post, actually. It was only 10 acres. It's very small for a trading route, or for a trading post. But it was situated on one of the most important branches of the incense route. And it's in the Negev desert. That's where I rode Hannah the camel. Love her. I have a selfie with her. It's the single coolest picture I've ever taken, ever, in my whole entire life. I miss that camel. We rode on part of I think we rode on part of the Old Spice road, not the incense route. Forgive me. But still very cool either way. Still in the Negev desert. Basically the same thing. What we're looking at here is one of two churches that were found in Mamshit. And this one is the Western Church, but we're going to talk about the Eastern Church first. The Eastern Church is called the Church of the Martyrs. That's what it was named. That church was part of a monastery complex. So a staircase led to a colonnaded courtyard or atrium built above a large cistern. The courtyard led via 3 doorways into a basilica-shaped church. The basilicas are like the dome ones, like St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, I think. There are probably a lot of St. Peter's basilicas, I'm not going to lie. A mosaic with 2 crosses was discovered in the nave, which is on the floor, which is evidence that the mosaic and the church was built before 427 Anno Domini, AD 427. I always do that anyways. Because in 427 there was a church council that decided, hey, maybe let's not put crosses on the floor anymore because then people step on them and that feels incorrect. So there's that. The apse is in the eastern part of the church, which contains 3 rows of benches for the clergy. And what's really interesting about this is that remains of the receptacles for the bones of martyrs were found in the rooms that flanked the apse, which is pretty neat. And then there's the Western Church. So that's the Eastern Church. This is the Western Church behind me. I'm not going to lie to you, I had a really difficult time picking a picture of Mamshit to show you because they're all so good. I loved Mamshit. It was really pretty, and it's a very underrated location. Not a ton of people go through there. We basically had the entire place to ourselves while we were there, and we were there for a hot second. And there weren't a ton of people, but 2 churches. This is the Western Church, which is called the Church of St. Nilus, which we'll discuss why it's called that in a minute here. The entrance to the church was through a colonnaded courtyard via 3 doors. 2 rows of columns divided this basilica-shaped church into 3 parts, the nave and the 2 side aisles. The pulpit was enclosed by a semicircular wall or apse, which marked the direction of prayer and the site of the altar. On either side of the apse were rooms in which rites were performed, so like baptism, that type of thing, which there actually was a baptistry found, which we will discuss in a second. The nave was paved with a mosaic floor, featuring geometric patterns, birds, 2 peacocks, and 2 dedicatory inscriptions. That's this floor that they're talking about right here. I don't think, even if I move, I don't think you can really see the mosaics. They're very pretty, and I liked them a lot. The central inscription reads I think it was written in Greek, actually, not Hebrew or anything. I'm pretty sure it was Greek. But it's not in modern day English, I'll tell you that. But it reads, God, save your servant Nilus, lover of Jesus, who founded this building. Preserve him and his household. So who is this Nilus guy? Because we keep talking about him. The whole church is named after him, and he's mentioned in the central inscription. So There are several ideas. The main and most prominent and most widely accepted one is that Nilus was a high-ranking official in Constantinople, which is now Istanbul, not Constantinople. It's Istanbul. Because Constantinople, I'm trying to remember the song now. Boom, 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 boom. You know that one? You know what I'm talking about? Go look it up. I think it's probably Animaniacs. It's always Animaniacs. I digress. So he was in Constantinople, now Istanbul, not Constantinople. And in Anno Domini 404, year not found, he left his wife and his second son and joined the monks in Mount Sinai with his son Theodulus. And while touring the desert, Bedouin tribesmen kidnapped Theodulus, who was then sold as a slave and finally purchased by a Christian priest from Elusa. Nilus settled in Sinai and compiled several writings. He died in 430. The Western Church was built by Nilus, as described in 3 different inscriptions. Is it the same Nilus? Maybe. There's a house that is adjoining to the church. First parsonage, maybe. I don't actually know. This is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, churches. I don't think it's the oldest church, but there was a lot going on. So it's not like Jesus left and they were like, okay, let's start building churches. It took a while, but the Byzantine churches swept. They were the ones that came in and were like, we're putting a church here, we're putting a church here. There's a church over St. Peter's house. There's basically any major historical site, any major biblical historical site. There's probably a basilica church, which is how we know where it is. But it took them a couple centuries, if not a few centuries, to be able to build these. So this is one of the oldest churches known to us. One of the church buildings. Next to the chapel of the Eastern Church, so the other one, the Church of the Martyrs, there was a baptistry, which was in the shape of a cross. It was almost like the Templar cross, if you know anything about, I'm pretty sure those are the Freemasons, they're Templar. I digress. It looks kind of like that with like the little sticky outy parts on the ends of each line. And they had that, and then, and I find this interesting, they had the main one there, and then in the corner, like in between kind of 2 of so like this part right up here, I don't think my hand gestures are making sense. There was like a second baptistry that was a lot smaller because it was likely used for infants and children. So even in the 400s, they were baptizing small children. I'm just saying. We can discuss all of that in a later episode, and I think we will. Anyways, and baptistries such as the one found in baptistries. It's a difficult word for me. I don't know words. I'm not an English major, I'm a theology major. Baptistries such as the one found in the Eastern Church have also been found in other Nabatean cities like Avdat, Shifta, and Petra. They're in the Nabatean region. I don't know where they are geographically, except for the Nabatean. One thing, and I'm saying this specifically for my sister, I don't know if she watches these. If she does, Jessica, hi, shout out. This city, so they were most known for being, they had something going for them. And then after that, they were then most known for breeding Arabian horses. So they had a lot of horse stables here, and that was cool. And it was also the richest Nabatean trade route, which as you're walking through the buildings, you can tell. One of the cool things about this is that not a ton of people come here, even though I think it's lovely and more people should go. That also meant that I got some really, really cool pot shards that I will now be showing you. We're going to start with some of the smaller ones. First, we have this guy. Okay, how neat is that? It's like a rim. Love it for us. This guy has a lot of little ridges, which I think are neat. And you can see the core that we were talking about last week. This guy's got some little ridges, very thin, right? Probably a cup would be my guess. This guy's one of my favorites. Actually, I'm going to show you this giant one before I show you my favorite one. Okay, see how huge that is? That thing's massive, okay? And it's interesting that the inside is a different color than the outside. I think that's kind of wild. This guy that I'm about to show you, it's little, but by golly, is it cool. Look at that. How cool is that? So it was clearly a very eloquent isn't the right word, decorative vase of some kind, probably. Maybe it was a amphora. I don't know. I'm not an expert in pottery. I also found some glass that, can't really see it. My tour guide insisted that it was real Roman glass. It's definitely not, because see, I have real Roman glass that I found. You can see that. How cool is that? And it's very curved. And you can see that it's not very transparent, which makes sense because they weren't very good at making glass yet. And it's also, you can't really see it that well on the video, but it's very bumpy. It's not smooth. And these other pieces of glass are very smooth. So I'm quite certain that these are not real. Probably this green one was from a beer bottle. But this is legitimate Roman glass. Or Byzantine glass, at the very least. So I think that's pretty cool. And we'll probably be bringing this church up again a little bit later, because I want to talk about church traditions and their value and how we should view church traditions, because there are a lot of issues when it comes to church traditions. A lot of denominations have different thoughts and views on church traditions. Some think that they don't matter. We don't need church traditions. All we need is the Bible, which, okay, fair enough. Some people think that church traditions carry the same weight as the Bible does, which can be not fantastic. And what Lutherans believe is that Scripture is top tier. Scripture is the ultimate authority, okay, because it was breathed by God. Scripture is Scripture, okay? Sola Scriptura. However, we also think that church tradition does carry a lot of weight. There's a reason why these traditions have stuck around for so long, and provided that they do not go against Scripture, there's no reason we shouldn't keep doing them. So those are kind of the main things. But we can see that, like, one of the big issues that I keep seeing in a lot of my theological Facebook groups, because I'm secretly a 50-year-old woman, you see a lot of people arguing over whether or not we should baptize babies and small children. And traditionally, you did. That was a thing. Catholics do it. Eastern Orthodox does it. Lutherans do it. It's a thing. But it's not said directly in the Bible to baptize babies and small children. So a lot of people who don't participate in church tradition will say, well, it's not said in the Bible, so we're not going to do it. Whereas Lutherans look at the issue and say, well, it's not explicitly stated in the Bible. The Bible does not say you have to baptize babies, but it also doesn't say you better not baptize babies. So we side with church tradition. And we see people early as the 400s, Anno Domini 400s, baptizing infants and small children. And that was as soon as they could build the churches. And you also saw, look up the Mamshit Baptistry. You'll see how small it is. You're not really immersing anybody in that. I'm just saying. Sprinkle baptisms are more common than you think. But we can do an entire episode about church traditions and how they are best viewed. Why do Lutherans do what they do? If you have any specific questions on something that Lutherans do that you're just like, what is that about? Feel free to drop them in the comments. I will check them and I will write them down. I think I have next month we're doing something, but probably the month after we can talk through some of the traditions and like, especially why do we not do things that the Catholics do? What's up with the Catholics? Because Catholics and Lutherans have 500 plus years of beef. So we can address that. That concludes our series on Israeli pottery. I had a lot of fun. If you want to hear more about my adventures in Israel, please feel free to let me know. I had such a good time in Israel. I really, really want to go back, and I will be going back. Mark my words. I will be making it back to Israel at some point. So that is it. I will see you next week for a series that I have planned out and have simply forgotten at this point. And well, we'll talk about whatever that is when the time comes. Bye.